first off, I'm grateful and appreciative you were able to meet me on such short notice. I messaged you this morning and I was like, hey, when can we meet? And you were able to meet me literally within 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Just to give everybody a little bit of backstory here, and we'll kind of go back in time with your own experiences. But we were in treatment together.
Yep.
Back at the old Programs for Change.
Yep.
And that's kind of when our paths had crossed. And since then, we've run into each other in recovery, and you've shared things about your past and your own struggles with mental health and substance use. And I just think that you have a really powerful story, and I'm just happy that you're here and you're willing to share it. So
yeah, thank you.
Dawn, if you kind of want to introduce yourself, and then we can kind of go back in time and whatever you're comfortable sharing with your own childhood.
Okay, my name is Dawn, and I'm going to be 51 years old. I'm the youngest of 5.
Okay.
I grew up in North Hudson. My dad was a drug and alcohol counselor.
Oh, interesting.
He sobered up when I was 2, so I never seen him drink. My mom was an Al-Anon. Never seen her drink. However, my siblings are the ones that I did see drink when they would babysit. First taste of alcohol that I remember doing is one of their parties that they had. My parents came home and they went flying out the back door, some of the people, and they threw the cans of beer out by the shed, and me and the neighbor kid were out playing on the swing set, and I seen these shiny little cans.
Yeah.
And went and opened one up and took a drink of it, and it was beer, and felt funny.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I remember drinking beer. And started smoking when I was about 8.
Wow.
Here and there, and really started smoking like full time when I was 10. Started smoking pot when I was 10 and started drinking when I was 10. Blackberry brandy to be exact, with my friend Ziggy, and got so drunk that the blackberry brandy was out, and I went to go get a beer out of the fridge, and she said, no, you can't do that, that's my dad's, and I took the bottle and I cracked it over her head. And I remember her and this guy Larry Garrity. They're both dead now. Larry committed suicide and she died from alcoholism. And we were drinking vodka and orange liqueur, and I got really drunk, passed out, puked. She took off. I was out in the field, I'd puke all over me, and blacked out. Don't really remember much other than getting water poured on me and getting woken up, and my mom telling me I was grounded for the rest of my life. Her and my sister had pulled up in a car because I was walking down the road. Couldn't walk straight. I was young, and Ziggy had moved to Eau Claire, and I remember running away quite often to there. And I would bring my allowance and buy weed while I was there.
Yeah.
Bring it home, and yeah.
So it started at a really early age.
Yeah.
You were kind of off to the races. Like, there wasn't much of a easing into it for you. It was very, wow.
Yep, really young. as far as my mental health issues go, because I do have mental health, I noticed it. Well, I think my sister and my mom noticed something was wrong with me when I was really little, like 5, maybe even younger, because I didn't want to go out trick-or-treating. I was deathly afraid of people. Wouldn't talk. Would try to run away. Things like that. And was put into counseling real young, and I don't remember why. I was put into some group. I don't remember why. I was raped when I was 12 and put in a psych ward for a month. And I didn't get put on any medication, but continually seeing the psychiatrist and started seeing this counselor. Her name was Pat Spension. And I seen her for years. And later I ended up getting pregnant. I ended up getting pregnant young. I ended up getting pregnant when I was 14. And I did use, during that pregnancy, alcohol and marijuana. And the father and me didn't stay together. And then I went through treatment at Ellie Phillips when Amber was about a month and a half.
Okay.
And I tried to stay sober and did that deal. Tried to stay sober, then I'd relapse. Tried to stay sober, then I'd relapse. Ended up meeting this guy that was a lot older than I was, and ended up getting pregnant by him. And I didn't use in that pregnancy. I was sober. But I did end up, before I got pregnant, I ended up getting put on antidepressants. And it was the wrong diagnosis back then. I came to find out later on in life. Later on in life, I found out that I'm bipolar, not depressed. I mean, depressed does come with bipolar, but
Sure.
It's a different kind of depression.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about bipolar and kind of how that, because it looks different for some people, and I know that there's like type 1 and type 2. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, and there's rapid cycling, and I was first diagnosed with rapid cycling, which is your moods change rapidly.
Okay.
Within a week,
Oh,
a
wow.
month.
Yeah.
With bipolar 1, it changes. I forget. I get really confused about it.
Yeah. But there's different characteristics.
Yeah,
and
there's different
Sure.
characteristics, and like bipolar 2, it's not, the highs aren't as high as bipolar 1,
Okay.
and the lows aren't as low.
Sure.
So it's different. And so for me, it was really confusing because I was rapid cycling, but nobody really had explained entirely what that meant.
Sure.
And things like that. And
Yeah.
I'd ended up, and then later I was diagnosed with suicidal ideation. And I had never heard of that before, but it made sense because I'd always obsessed about wanting to kill myself, and I tried several times to do it. Especially when you're using and you don't want to be.
Right.
and your life is going to hell and you feel like a failure.
Right.
And you have these little kids and you don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're failing them. Like they would be better off without you. That's what I kept thinking. They'd be better off without me. And when I was about 25, I lost my mom, or I lost my dad, and then I lost my mom 9 months later.
Wow.
And just totally fucking lost my shit.
I could imagine. Yeah, or I couldn't imagine that. And they were, sounds like they were big support.
They
for
were a
you.
big support. They were my rock.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I didn't have that. And I had big time issues with my oldest son. He had behavioral issues that they helped me deal with.
Right.
And his dad was not in the picture, and I didn't want him in the picture because he was abusive and other things. He was accused of molesting my daughter and just in and out of prison his whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just felt that he needed stability. He needed a lot of stability
Yeah.
in his life.
Yeah.
And he was in foster care because he wasn't doing well in school, and I wasn't doing well mentally, and I was using, and I had tried committing suicide, ended up in a psych ward, and it came up to the 18-month mark, and I decided to put him up for adoption with the foster parents that he was with, and with the understanding that I was still his mom.
Yeah.
I would still be a part of his life.
How old was he at that point?
He was 10,
Okay.
and
What was that? What was that like?
I cried every night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cried every night because I didn't want to do it, but I had to.
Yeah.
I had to. I had to think of him.
Yeah.
Because me smoking crack, doing meth, and doing all that shit wasn't going to be any good for him. He was such a mama's boy that it was
Hard decision to make.
And he started to do well there, and then there was times that he didn't. He ended up, he's doing well now. He's not talking to me, but that's okay. So, yeah, so my parents died, and I mentally, physically, everything went down the shitter.
Yeah.
I went through treatment 3 times. trying to get my shit back together because I'd gotten an inheritance and I just kept getting out and buying meth. And the last time I landed in a treatment center, I ended up with this guy that was just got out of prison for dealing meth and moved in with him.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
No judgment.
Yeah.
It sounds like something I would do, you know.
Yep. And he started dealing again.
Yeah.
And I was getting my stuff for free.
Yep.
And this is the time that I was just made the decision about Richie.
Yeah.
And
That's your son.
yeah.
Okay.
And I still had my two other kids. Well, my daughter Amber was with her dad, and I had custody of my youngest son. But it didn't last that long, obviously, because we ended up getting busted.
Sure.
Pat, you did his podcast.
Yeah.
We ended up rolling into his driveway, and he was being raided, and we ended up getting arrested
Okay.
in his driveway. And so then my son Seth had to move in with a friend of mine's for a year. And then I started to take life seriously. And I did. I stayed sober after that for almost 10 years.
Wow. It's a long time.
And I was on barely any medication. I don't know how I did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really don't know how I did it.
And just kind of going back to that point, 10 years is a long time. I mean, you would think you had it licked at that point, right?
Yeah, and what happened was I stopped going to meetings.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I stopped going to meetings and thought I started getting arrogant and getting an ego and letting people irritate me.
Yeah.
And just getting this thing in my head that there was something better,
Yeah.
and there wasn't. Because as soon as I stopped, I went back to drinking. And then life was fine for a while. Manageable.
Yeah. Or it looked like it was, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I had bought a house and everything.
Wow. Wow.
Kept a job for 12 years. And yeah, bought a house. And everything went to hell. I ended up finding out that I needed neck surgery, couldn't work. Ended up, the husband I had at the time, he ended up leaving my most vulnerable time. My mental illness got really bad. I wasn't sure if I was going to be homeless or not.
Right.
I didn't at that point. I mean, I survived it at that point, but I kept using, kept using marijuana. Drinking occasionally. Drinking isn't my drug of choice, but that's always what I run to first.
Sure. Yeah,
At this point, I hadn't done meth in 16 years, but when I'd gotten back, my husband had left me at my most vulnerable time, and then I ended up kicking him out. He came back, and then I ended up kicking him out because he brought meth home.
Oh, wow.
Or he told me that he did meth, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole and see where it goes, because he used to deal it too. And I wanted to see how much he was lying to me about stuff, because he was giving me so much crap about smoking weed. And he was lying to me the whole entire time. Ended up buying a whole pile of it, had it underneath his pillow, and called me a bad mom one night. And I said, you can pack your shit and get out. I'm calling the cops. Get out. Start flushing. And I wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
I called the cops.
Yeah.
And I made him flush it. And he got out, and I'm like, you're not going to treat me like that anymore. I'll survive.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah.
And I don't need that shit no more. I mean, obviously I did it later.
Right.
Because I moved here to River Falls. First I moved to Woodville. Still smoked pot. Then I moved here to Woodville. Was drinking and smoking pot. Then I had a psychosis during COVID. Left my job. I was hearing voices telling me to do certain things, like write. I'm going to back up a little bit. When I was in jail, after getting busted in Patrick's driveway,
Yep.
Richie's biological dad was involved in a murder in East Farmington. He lives in the cities.
Okay.
And it was people that I was getting my meth from. So I was a little freaked out.
Sure.
Because I thought he was coming after me. You know, you're in your paranoia.
Sure.
And you just never know.
Yeah.
The judge wanted my address blacked out off of all court papers, and it wasn't. He sent me a letter, and I thought, what if he was coming after me next because he had my address?
Right. So there's an element of that's a possibility that could actually happen, but also you combine the drugs and,
yeah.
So it was not a good situation.
Yeah, was it real or wasn't it? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so then I started hearing voices when I was in River Falls, and I wouldn't answer my phone. Like, some of my family was trying to get a hold of me because I left my job, and some of my friends that, I was trying to go to meetings, even though I was smoking pot. I was trying to go to meetings and get my shit together.
Right.
And I wouldn't answer the phone. I was MIA. They were concerned about me, obviously.
Right.
And My son was getting irritated with me because he was there with me. My youngest son. He didn't know what the hell was going on with me.
Right.
And I was in a psychosis. I couldn't move. Sometimes I'd be paralyzed. I couldn't move off my bed. The voices were like telling me, don't move off your bed.
Right.
It was scary.
Yeah.
It
How,
gets
how long did you stay like in that state of mind for?
a couple months.
Wow. And with, I mean, especially the meth now, it's not uncommon. It's a pretty common occurrence for people to enter psychosis.
And I wasn't on meth.
Oh, you weren't. You were sober at this time. Okay.
I was on
Wow.
marijuana.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And barely, because I didn't have any money at that point.
So this was all just completely.
My illness, my mental illness.
Wow. Is that a common part of? I mean, you hear about people with like. I guess. What did that look like? Like what did something like trigger it? Like was it just. Did it just kind of get set on by stress? Like how did that?
Sometimes it can be something you read.
Oh really? So that whole situation with the court thing had happened with your with Richie's dad, and you're saying that might have like triggered it or something.
No, it wasn't that. It was I was watching. That had happened way before.
Oh okay.
I was watching my youngest. I was watching my grandson. And all of a sudden, he looks just like Richie. And it brought me back to when Richie was that age. And I was still with his dad. And it snapped me.
Wow.
It made my mind snap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fast. I mean, it's interesting to me, just kind of hearing you describe that. Like, so can you talk a little bit about like the turning point in your life? Because obviously, I went through treatment with you. It would have been over a year ago now. And by that time I had a few months at least, and you had significantly more time at that, more months than I did.
Yeah.
Because you had already had a kind of a period of sobriety. Yeah, can you kind of talk about like what your life looks like now and the changes that you've made and what you feel like really works for you?
Well, what happened is I had gotten charged with a couple felonies. And I was driving down the road, and I wasn't supposed to be because I didn't have a license. I got pulled over and got lucky because they got a call to help on the freeway in Hudson and sent me on my merry way, just gave me a ticket. I proceeded to go on my merry way, and I decided that was just too many close calls. I did do one Yahoo that night, did like one line that night. I was homeless at the time because I was homeless on and off for a year. I went to the Hammond parking lot, park and ride. And I said, I can't do this shit no more. I cannot do this anymore. God, I cannot do this anymore. And I remained sober ever since. And like 3 days later, I got an email from Holiday Inn Express and Suites saying that I had a job because I'd been applying all over to get a job, and they hired me. And so I got a hold of them right away and went in and interviewed, and they hired me, and the next day I started. So I do have a picture of me homeless with a big smile on my face. But the reason why I have that big smile on my face is because I was sober and I had just gotten...
That job?
Yeah.
Wow. So that was kind of a turning point for you. Like,
yeah.
That was when, like, things... It's almost like you had kind of sent up this prayer, like, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. And then, like, you know, in a short period of time later, like, something kind of came through for you.
Yeah.
And you saw that as, like, a sign to keep, you know, going. And
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, like, when we're able to recognize those things in our lives, like those spiritual experiences or whatever you want to call it, and we're, like, in a conscious enough state where we can say, like, okay, all right, God, like, you know, you got my back, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can relate to that so much. It's happened to me so many times, and a lot of times I ignored it, but it sounds like you were able to see it for what it was. And so fast forward a little bit after you completed treatment, or, you know, and kind of, what does your life look like now? Like, I know you're pretty active and you go to a lot of meetings.
I go to a lot of meetings. I have a sponsor that she's amazing. I've learned so much from her. This is the second time I've gone through the steps now with a sponsor, and the way I've done them with her has helped me so much.
Yeah.
To be able to understand the program much better.
Yeah.
I just got asked to be somebody else's sponsor.
Wow.
I'm a little nervous about it because it's my first time, but I think I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do go to a lot of meetings.
I was going to say, I see you up in Polk County, you know, all over the place, down here. And you live here in town, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're like me. We're all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is really cool to see. With your mental health, and obviously there's a lot of intersections with substance use throughout your life, but, like, how do you take care of that aspect?
With my mental health, I'm on a bunch of medications now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up, one of the times that I was living here in River Falls, I ended up in a mental health hospital for, a mental health hospital and group home between the two for 4 months. So now I see a woman, Baldwin, and I see her about every month.
Okay.
And she just keeps tabs on my state of mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because make sure that the meds are working for me.
Right. Right. Trying to think of what else. What would you say to someone who might be struggling or experiencing some of the same things that you have in your life?
I would say just don't give up. And don't be afraid to talk. Really don't. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Well, Dawn, I first off just want to thank you for your bravery and vulnerability here today. I know that, like, it's not easy to share the things that you've shared, and then especially to, like, broadcast it, you know, for the world to see. But I also feel like there's something really inspiring, you know, when people share their stories, and you know, they're just honest about where they've been and what they've been through, because it gives people hope, you know, that it can be
Yeah.
that you can overcome those things, and it doesn't have to define you. You know, it can be a part of your life, but it can be managed. And I just think that you're an example of that. And I'm really grateful that our paths have crossed. And I just, yeah, I know we'll stay in contact. And I want to give you kind of this final opportunity. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I would just like to say to anybody new coming in that it's all, the promises have only just begun. You got to give it a chance. There's going to be some pain. There's going to be some roller coasters, but you just got to hang on for the ride. You really do, because the good stuff is coming.
Awesome stuff.